We move forward. Good evening.
Governor, would you, by the way, thank you for being on. Would you commit today to support the passage of an Alaska Sovereignty Act, a law, not a resolution, and the Alaska Firearms Freedom Act next time that the legislature's in session?
I will commit to doing what is best and most fiscally and socially conservative and protecting of our Constitution, looking at all the possibilities to lead us in that direction. I won't commit to supporting anything that's not in front of me that I can look at to make sure every I is dotted, T's crossed, but I think you know where my principles are, where my values are, and my vision for Alaska. And if those things fit that agenda, I'll support it.
All right. You there, caller?
Yeah, unfortunately, I think that's a negative response.
Okay.
I apologize. Thank you, though, Governor.
All right. Thanks very much. And I did send your office a resolution, not an act, and a Freedom Act and a Sovereignty Act, and I was hoping that I'd get a response other than it getting passed over to Mike Kelly, and we'll talk about that later, though. We'll go over here. Good evening. You're on the air.
Hi, how you doing?
Good. How are you?
Good. Excuse me. Governor, really thank you for trying to keep a rein on those rascals in Juneau. My question is this. If there's a disaster on the West Coast of some kind, pretty much all of our supplies get cut off. They don't come up shipping anymore. And as far as Obama wants to spend money creating jobs and so forth, has your administration looked at getting the railroad punched through down to the lower 40, or down to Canada, down to the lower 48, so we have a second means of getting the things we need to survive on up here?
Well, I'm glad that you recognize the uniqueness of Alaska and the strategic location that is Alaska, which certainly provides for a lot of challenges, doesn't it? And it's all the more reason for Alaska to be as self-sufficient as possible with the food that we grow, and that is why we support the agriculture industry up here. That's why we wanted to make sure that Mad-Muscamade wasn't going to be a complete failure. We wanted to make sure that our dairy would be in private hands because private sector runs the dairy better than government can. It's why we want to develop our oil and gas so we can supply ourselves if such a thing were to happen, especially on the West Coast and we were cut off. As for railroad corridor, Frank Murkowski, and I'm thankful for this, he had looked into the expansion there, and those plans are still on a shelf somewhere. To tell you truthfully, we haven't pursued that transportation mode, that infrastructure being built, but it's plans are there on the shelf. It is something that I should look at again and see if that's something that would help allow Alaska to be more self-sufficient with having potentially there the needed link via a different transportation corridor that could come in very handy if something were to happen on the West Coast.
Great. I think us not being a colony where we export raw materials and import finished goods would be real good.
All right.
Well, yeah, and I'd like to see Alaska head further in that direction. And in the 3 years that we've been in office now, we're trying to take those steps and to help educate the public as to why it is that we need to be as secure as possible. I really believe that Alaska has so much to offer the rest of the United States, but we also have great opportunity to be quite self-sufficient, and we're not there yet. We're still too reliant on other areas, on bigger government in Washington, D.C. We have got to kind of start cutting ourselves off from that kind of thinking even to allow us more opportunities to prosper, to grow, to thrive, but ultimately to be more secure.
You're doing great. Thank you.
Thanks for your call. We're just under 6 minutes now. Let's move over here. Good evening.
Hello?
Yes.
Yeah. Governor, we're sure glad to have you here, and we love you. Are you aware that the unelected international bureaucrats, internationalist bureaucrats from the State Department and Department of State, currently secretly conspiring with representatives of the Russian government to give away certain strategically and economically important islands of Alaska? There's 8 of them. I won't name them, but they potentially hold tons of valuable minerals, and the sea and the 200 area around them is vital to our production for oil. Are you aware of that? And if so, what have you done about it?
Here is what I am aware of. The Russian government did flag undersea land as their own. They're staking claim to what potentially could be the greatest oil and gas reserves on the globe. The United States of America is kind of missing the boat on this because we haven't signed on to the Law of the Sea Treaty yet, and there's been a lot of conservatives, people in like-minded in my own party who have said, nope, we don't want to give more power to the UN, so we cannot sign on to this treaty. But I believe that we have to. Lisa Murkowski also believes that we must do this at this time so that we can start staking claim to what is rightfully the Arctic lands of Alaska, which belong to the United States of America. If we don't, Russia and other countries are going to exert more and more power, authority, rights to undersea lands that are so rich in resources, and they're going to start taking over. So that's something that we're doing about it, is working with our delegation in support of the Law of the Sea Treaty and having to do some educating there in conservative circles as to why it is, no, we don't want to concede and give more power to the UN, certainly not, but we have got to be a player in this, otherwise we're going to be left out in the cold.
All right, appreciate it. Thank you very much. We go over here. Good evening.
Good evening, Governor.
Good evening.
Hunting season's coming very close, and there's a favorite trail called the Rex Trail. It's an RS-2477 trail that's been, some guys muddied it up pretty bad with rubber-tired rigs, and the rest of us are paying for it now. Tom Irwin has studied it for 3 years. I've got 5 letters. We've gone nowhere with this. The Rex Trail, we've been driving it with Nodwells for years and years. We don't damage it, but now we're not allowed to drive these trails anymore. The state of Alaska is shutting down more of our hunting access to study. I don't know why, but I think they've gone too far, and I think that it needs to be seriously looked at, so the hunters can go gather our meat.
Well, I'm with you on that. I understand that access to our resources is extremely important to you and probably most Fairbanks residents, certainly important to me. Again, it's one of the reasons that we live here is to have access to our wildlife and other resources. The specific issue that you're talking about, I'm not so familiar with. Maybe I should be. And give me the name of the trail again.
The Rex Trail.
Okay.
It's right outside of Healy. They closed it for 3 years now because the monster trucks went in there, rubber tires, and tore it up. Now, so we've traveled it with Nodwells, 4-foot wide tracks. We don't damage it, but we're not allowed to go in there now.
So, yeah, there again, it's the good guys that get punished for
Right.
not doing something
Exactly.
wrong. Let me find out from Tom Irwin on that, okay?
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your call. We have time for one last call. Good evening. You're on the air.
Hey, good evening. My question is pertaining to the Yukon River, which is a state navigable waterway, and I'm wondering why the state's given up its sovereignty to the federal government of who can fish and who can't fish on this river.
Well, you're referring to the very contentious subsistence issue, of course, and whether the feds would have the right to control those waters. It's been a long brewing contentious issue in the state, and I don't think that we're going to come up with any kind of solution in my final year in office in this first term. Certainly want the public's input on it, on what it is that they are desiring, but in support of our Constitution and equal rights, equal access, I don't want the feds taking over and telling us what to do. I am a strong proponent of the equality clause in our Constitution, but I'm not going to pretend like my administration is going to have the answer to that problem. It's been a long, long, long ongoing problem for Alaska, and unfortunately, I think it's going to continue for a while, and I want to be honest with you on it.
All right, thank you.
Thank you for your call. Appreciate it. Governor, I'd like you to hold on the line for a second. I want to thank you for coming on the program, and we look forward to talking to you again here soon, okay?
Thank you so much.
All right, don't go anywhere. I want to talk to you real quick.